When I went to HR about a coworker who was stalking me, I thought they would protect me. Instead, they called him into their office, told him everything I said, and then gave him my new desk location. What happened next made me fear for my life. I need to take you back to where this all started because I think it's important you understand that I did everything right. I followed every rule. I trusted the system, and the system absolutely failed me. I was 27 years old, working as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized tech company in Austin. I genuinely loved my job. The work was creative, the pay was decent, and I built real friendships with my teammates. For the first time in my career, I felt like I belonged somewhere. His name was Derek. He joined the company about 8 months after I did, hired as a data analyst on a completely different floor. We met at a company-wide happy hour, and at first he seemed perfectly normal, friendly even. He asked about my role, we talked about our favorite restaurants in the city, and when the night ended, I didn't think anything of it. But then Derek started showing up. Everywhere. The first few times, I brushed it off as coincidence. Oh, we happened to be in the break room at the same time. Oh, he was just passing by my floor to talk to someone in accounting. Oh, he was grabbing lunch at the same cafe 3 blocks away. Coincidences happen, right? But the coincidences kept piling up. He started timing his arrivals to match mine. I'd pull into the parking garage, and there he'd be, walking toward the elevator, ready to ride up with me. He memorized my coffee order and would have one waiting on my desk before I even got in. When I mentioned this to a coworker, she laughed and said he probably just had a crush. I wish it had been that simple. The messages started about 3 months in, first on Slack, then on my personal email, which I never gave him, then on my phone. I still don't know how he got my number. The messages weren't overtly threatening at first. They were just constant. Thinking about you. You looked beautiful today. I saw you talking to that guy in accounting. Who is he to you? I started changing my routine. I'd come in early, leave late, eat lunch at my desk. But Derek adapted. It was like he was studying me, learning my patterns just so he could break them down and find me again. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the parking garage walking to my car after staying 2 hours late specifically to avoid him. The garage was nearly empty. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Fast footsteps. I turned around, and there was Derek, about 20 feet away, just standing there, staring. He didn't say anything. He just watched me with this blank expression on his face. I fumbled with my keys, got in my car, and drove home shaking so badly I had to pull over twice. That night, I documented everything. Every message, every coincidental encounter, every time he showed up where he shouldn't have been. I had screenshots, dates, times. I built a case file like my life depended on it, because honestly, I was starting to think it might. The next morning, I went straight to HR. I'd heard all the jokes about HR not being your friend, about how they only protect the company, but I thought, surely when it comes to something this serious, actual stalking, actual fear for my safety, they would do the right thing. The HR director was a woman named Pamela, mid-50s, reading glasses perpetually perched on her nose, one of those people who smiles with her mouth but never her eyes. I sat across from her desk and laid everything out. I showed her the messages, I told her about the parking garage, I explained that I was genuinely afraid to come to work. Pamela listened, she nodded, she took notes on a yellow legal pad, and when she finished, she looked at me over those reading glasses and said, "This sounds like a personal matter. Have you considered just telling him you're not interested?" I was stunned. I told her I had. I told her I'd asked him multiple times to stop contacting me. I told her I was documenting everything because I was afraid it might escalate. She sighed like I was being dramatic and said she'd look into it. 3 days later, I got an email from Pamela asking me to come to her office. I thought maybe she had taken my complaint seriously. Maybe they were going to move him to a different building, or adjust our schedules, or do literally anything to create distance between us. When I walked in, Pamela wasn't alone. Sitting next to her was a man from legal named Richard, and across from them both was Derek. My heart stopped. I actually felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at Pamela, and she gestured to an empty chair and said, "Sit down. We're going to mediate this situation." Mediate. She wanted to mediate my stalking complaint, like Derek and I were 2 coworkers who couldn't agree on a project deadline. The next 45 minutes were the most surreal, terrifying experience of my professional life. Pamela had printed out every single message I'd submitted as evidence, every screenshot, every email, every text. She literally gave my stalker a detailed record of exactly what I'd reported about him. He sat there reading through it all with this calm, focused expression, and then he looked up at me, made direct eye contact, and said, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I was just trying to be friendly." Richard from legal nodded like this was a reasonable explanation. Pamela wrote something on her legal pad and said, "Derek has agreed to limit his communications with you to work-related matters only. I think that should resolve this." I tried to explain that this wasn't about communication. This was about him following me, tracking my movements, showing up in empty parking garages at night. But Pamela cut me off. She said, "We've addressed your concerns. If you have continued issues, we can revisit this." And then, and this is the part that still makes me sick to my stomach, she told Derek that I'd requested a desk reassignment for personal comfort reasons and informed him exactly where my new desk would be. 3rd floor, northwest corner, by the window. She gave him my location. After everything I told her, she handed him a map directly to me. I walked out of that meeting knowing that I was in more danger than before I'd reported anything. Derek knew everything now. He knew what I'd said, he knew I was afraid, and he knew exactly to find me. Okay, I need to stop here for a second because I am still shaking thinking about this moment. Was I wrong to trust HR? Should I have gone straight to the police instead? Hit subscribe if you think Pamela should have lost her job for this, and drop a comment telling me what you would have done, because I genuinely did not know what to do next. And trust me, what happened after this meeting, it gets so much worse. The week after that meeting was the longest of my life. I started having nightmares. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I'd heard footsteps outside my apartment. I bought pepper spray and kept it in my hand every time I walked to my car. And Derek was everywhere again, but now it was different. Now he had this look on his face whenever he saw me, this knowing, satisfied expression, like he'd won something, like the company had officially told him that what he was doing wasn't that bad. He started walking by my new desk multiple times a day. He'd wave, smile, say things like, "Hope you're having a good day." To anyone watching, he looked friendly, normal, but I knew what he was really doing. He was reminding me that he knew where I was, that nowhere was safe. I went back to HR twice more. The first time, Pamela told me that Derek was complying with their agreement, and she didn't see a problem. The second time, she suggested that maybe I was being too oversensitive and should consider speaking to the company's employee assistance program about my anxiety. She tried to make me think I was the problem, that I was imagining things, that my fear wasn't real. I knew I had to do something different, so I started keeping a detailed log, not for HR this time, but for myself. Dates, times, witnesses. I emailed everything to my personal account so I'd have records outside of company systems. And then, about 3 weeks after the mediation meeting, something happened that changed everything. It was a Friday night. I'd stayed late again. I was always staying late now, trying to avoid the parking garage during normal hours. Around 8 p.m., I finally packed up and headed down. The garage was nearly empty, just a handful of cars on my level. I was about 30 feet from my car when I noticed it, something on my windshield. At first, I thought it was a flyer, but as I got closer, I realized it was a photograph of me, sleeping in my apartment through my bedroom window. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. On the back, written in red marker, were the words, "You looked so peaceful." I didn't go back to HR. I called the police. The officers who responded were initially skeptical. I could tell they were thinking this was some kind of workplace drama. But when I showed them the photograph, when I explained the months of escalation, when I pulled up my documentation, their expressions changed. They took a report, they told me to get a restraining order, and when they asked if I knew who might have done this, I gave them Derek's name without hesitation. The following Monday, I didn't go to work. Instead, I went to the courthouse and filed for a protective order. I submitted everything, every screenshot, every incident, the photograph. The judge granted a temporary order that same day.
When HR found out about the restraining order, suddenly they took me very seriously. Pamela called me personally, her tone completely different now. "Oh my goodness, I had no idea the situation was this severe. We're going to take immediate action." I wanted to scream. I had told her exactly how severe it was. I had documented everything. I had begged for help. But now that there was legal paperwork involved, now that there was potential liability for the company, suddenly it was a crisis. Derek was placed on administrative leave that day. A week later, he was terminated. But not for stalking me, oh no. Officially, he was let go for violating company communication policies. They never once acknowledged what he actually did. But here's the thing. Losing his job didn't stop Derek. It made him worse. Without the structure of work, without the fear of professional consequences, Derek had nothing left to lose. He started showing up near my apartment complex. I'd see his car parked across the street at random hours. He created fake social media profiles to send me messages. He called my personal phone from blocked numbers, never saying anything, just breathing. I stopped sleeping. I stopped feeling safe anywhere. I moved in with my sister for 2 weeks while I found a new apartment. I changed my phone number. I varied my route to work every single day. The permanent restraining order hearing happened about a month later. Derek showed up with a lawyer, tried to argue that he was just being friendly, that I had misinterpreted his intentions. But I had documentation. I had the photograph. I had the police report. The judge granted the permanent order and warned Derek that any violation would result in immediate arrest. That was 2 years ago. Derek eventually moved out of state. I found out through the grapevine. I'd like to say I feel completely safe now, but I don't think I'll ever feel the same way I did before. But here's what I need you to understand about this story. Every single thing that happened after that mediation meeting, the photograph, the escalation, the months of terror, could have been prevented if HR had taken my complaint seriously, if they had kept my report confidential instead of showing Derek everything, if they had created actual separation instead of putting us in a room together. I did everything right. I documented, I reported through proper channels, I trusted the system. And the system didn't just fail me, it actively made things worse. It gave my stalker information. It validated his behavior by treating it like a minor disagreement. It nearly got me killed. I later found out I wasn't the only woman Derek had fixated on. There had been complaints at his previous job too, complaints that were handled the same way mine was, quietly, dismissively, in a way that protected the company's liability rather than the actual human beings involved. I'm sharing this story because I want people to know HR is not your friend. They exist to protect the company, not you. And when your safety is on the line, you need to protect yourself first. Document everything outside of company systems. Know your legal options. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, trust it. I eventually left that company, not because of Derek, he was gone, but because I couldn't walk into that building without remembering Pamela's dismissive smile, without remembering how she handed my stalker a roadmap to find me. I found a new job, a better job, with a company that has actual protocols for situations like mine. I'm healing, slowly. But I'll never forget those 45 minutes in that HR office. I'll never forget the moment I realized that the people who were supposed to help me had just made me a target. And I hope by telling this story, I can help someone else avoid making the same mistake I did. Trust your instincts, protect yourself, because no one else will.
Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was heavy, and I really appreciate you staying until the end. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next video. And if you have your own workplace horror story, whether it's an HR nightmare, a toxic boss, or a coworker from hell, I want to hear it. Drop your story in the comments or send it to us, because it might be featured in an upcoming video. Your experience matters, and you deserve to be heard. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next one.